Weird impact that she's having on young Black girls. And I'm going to be completely honest, on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way that it should be.
Dominique Thorne, I have seen all of the first 3 episodes of Ironheart. How did this even come about?
Ironheart is practically unwatchable. Toot toot, Jerry laughs. Yes, there is an alphabet character. They admit Ironheart sucks, but look, they're getting ready to blame you for it because Ironheart fulfills low expectations with weak narrative, poorly written characters, and dull acting.
So in this, I'm not sure what they're meant to be, because this character isn't to be confused with Slug.
Slug, our hacker extraordinaire.
Who is also the exact opposite in the same show. I'm really confused.
Yeah, and it's like the real Tony Stark. It's like back somehow, and there's like a moment where she's flying through, and he's like, "Who is that?" And she's like, "I'm Ironheart, Mr. Stark." And he's like, "I like that girl." And then he like goes to do something else. Like that would be like the level of something that I think would possibly happen.
Marvel's empire isn't collapsing quietly. It's crumbling in full view of millions. And at the center of this storm is Ironheart, the show that was supposed to carry Marvel into a new era, but instead became its biggest controversy. For more than a decade, Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man held the MCU together. When he left, Marvel needed someone to fill those shoes, and they chose Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams, a teenage genius framed as the future of the franchise. But when Ironheart premiered, fans didn't see Marvel's rebirth. They saw weak scripts, endless comparisons to Tony Stark, and a performance that quickly turned Dominique into a lightning rod for criticism.
Was a massive disappointment in the ratings for them, certainly. We do know, when you go and you look at through these charts, the first couple days it was out, because we have 3 days of Ironheart in these numbers, just like we had 3 days of Daredevil in these numbers. And Daredevil in those first 3 days had over 300 million minutes watched. So, and that was with less possible runtime than something like Ironheart. Yet we know that it hasn't matched that.
Natalie AI thing seems utterly preposterous and ridiculous, and even for an MCU show, I'm finding it to be a little bit of a bridge too far to go. The heist crew, all lame. Every single one of them, all lame.
The dream of Marvel's next icon began to unravel, and just as the Backlash hit its peak, another name entered the fire, Rachel Zegler. Her sudden link to Ironheart didn't just spark rumors, it split the fandom in two, launching one of the ugliest casting wars Marvel has ever faced. Now Marvel stands at a dangerous crossroads. Stay loyal to Dominique and risk more backlash, or gamble on Rachel and ignite outrage over betrayal. Either choice could reshape the MCU's future, and fans are watching every move.
To really reckon with what that means for the life that she wants to lead.
It's very short-lived. It's brushed over really quickly, and she kind of reverts back to her old self.
But one thing is for certain about this series is that all agendas aside, let's be very real about this. There's a lack of character development. The directing, the producing, the writing is just way off. It makes no sense at all, and it's very lackluster. There's no depth to it.
Does it defy the haters? Or is it another skippable series? It's always about you, right? It's always about the audience. It's amazing. It doesn't matter if it's the 2024 election or whether it's a Disney streaming product. It's always about like how evil is the actual voters? How evil are the audience?
Before there was Ironheart, before there was even an MCU as we know it today, there was Tony Stark. Robert Downey Jr. didn't just play a superhero, but he defined a generation of cinema. His portrayal of Iron Man wasn't just entertaining, it built the blueprint for a billion-dollar empire that would dominate Hollywood for more than a decade. Iron Man was more than Marvel's first big success. He became the anchor that held the entire cinematic universe together. Every crossover, every storyline, every new hero that followed relied on the foundation Tony Stark created. Fans didn't just love the character, they trusted him. He was the heart, the leader, and the symbol of everything the MCU stood for. But when Avengers Endgame gave Tony Stark his final goodbye, it left Marvel with a terrifying gap. The king was gone, and the throne was empty. For Disney, this wasn't just a story decision, it was a financial crisis. Billions of dollars and the entire future of the franchise depended on finding someone who could carry that same weight. That search brought them to a bold, risky choice. Riri Williams, better known as Ironheart. Unlike the icons of Marvel's past, she wasn't a billionaire playboy or a world-weary god. She was a young genius, a prodigy who built her own armor, a character meant to reflect a new generation of heroes. And when Dominique Thorne was cast in the role, Marvel made it clear this wasn't a side character, this was their next face of the MCU. But passing the torch from Iron Man to Ironheart was never going to be simple. Fans weren't just asking, can she be good? They were asking, can she be legendary? And as the spotlight turned toward Dominique Thorne, the expectations weren't just high, they were impossible. And what happened next would prove just how heavy that legacy really was. When Marvel first introduced Ironheart, it wasn't presented as just another spin-off. It was framed as a cultural milestone, a bold new chapter in the MCU. Dominique Thorne's casting as Riri Williams wasn't only about continuing the story of Iron Man, it was about representation, progress, and the promise of a new icon who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the legends who came before her. Disney poured heavy weight into the announcement. Press releases, interviews, and convention panels all painted Dominique as the genius who could outshine even Tony Stark. She wasn't brought in quietly. She was hyped as the centerpiece of Marvel's entire Phase 5. For months, fans were told Ironheart would symbolize the rebirth of the MCU. The first signs of this vision came in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, where Dominique made her debut. Even though her screen time was limited, it was enough to spark excitement. Audiences whispered that Marvel was planting seeds for something bigger, a fresh face that could carry the franchise forward. For a moment, the hype worked. Fans believed the future was in good hands. But hype is fragile, and the expectations Marvel built were impossible to sustain. Every headline that declared Dominique the future of Marvel only made the pressure heavier. The comparisons to Robert Downey Jr. weren't just expected, they were guaranteed. Dominique wasn't entering as herself, she was entering as the woman chosen to replace a legend. And when Ironheart finally premiered, the collision between hype and reality was brutal. Fans weren't forgiving, critics weren't kind, and suddenly the crown Marvel had placed on Dominique's head felt less like an honor and more like a target. What was meant to be a celebration quickly spiraled into disappointment. And that's where the backlash began. The debut of Ironheart was supposed to be Marvel's victory lap. Instead, it became one of its most painful failures. The moment the series landed on Disney+, social media erupted with harsh reactions. Fans expected a revolution. What they got, in their eyes, was a watered-down imitation of the MCU's glory days. TikTok edits comparing Dominique Thorne's Riri Williams to Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark spread like wildfire. Side-by-side clips painted her as awkward, uncharismatic, and unworthy of the Iron Man mantle. On Reddit, long threads with thousands of upvotes debated whether Dominique was the weakest Marvel lead ever cast. And YouTube creators churned out breakdowns titled Ironheart's Big Mistake and Why Dominique Can't Carry Marvel. Even the numbers told the same story. Within its first 3 days, Ironheart was crushed in viewership by Daredevil, a series with less hype and runtime, but far more fan engagement. For a show that was supposed to define Marvel's future, the statistics looked devastating. Instead of becoming the next MCU juggernaut, Ironheart felt like a misstep Marvel couldn't afford. And worst of all, the criticism didn't just fall on the writing, pacing, or production. It landed squarely on Dominique Thorne. Whether fair or not, she became the face of the backlash. Fans mocked her performance, blamed her for weak storytelling, and turned her into a symbol of Marvel's decline. What began as criticism of the show transformed into attacks on the actress herself. By the time the dust settled, the narrative had shifted completely. It wasn't just Ironheart isn't working, it had become Dominique Thorne can't carry Marvel, and once that idea spread, created the perfect opening for another name to step into the spotlight. This was the twist nobody saw coming. Just as fans were tearing Dominique apart, whispers began circulating about another actress, Rachel Zegler. Already making headlines as Disney's live-action Snow White, Rachel's name suddenly became tied to Ironheart. And once that rumor spread, the internet did what it always does. It turned speculation into inevitability. Fan edits of Rachel in the Ironheart armor exploded across TikTok and Twitter. Hashtags like Rachel is Ironheart and Recast Ironheart began trending worldwide. For every fan defending Dominique, there were 2 more creating mock trailers and cinematic posters, imagining Rachel as Marvel's savior. In a matter of weeks, the fandom split into 2 armies. Rachel herself fueled the fire without saying a word. A single Instagram selfie showing a faint red and gold reflection in the background sent Marvel fans into a frenzy. To some, it looked like a deliberate tease. To others, it was proof Disney had already made their choice. The silence from both Marvel and Rachel only made the speculation louder. As Rachel's visibility grew, so did the divide. Supporters argued she had the star power, charisma, and presence Dominique lacked. Critics accused Disney of betrayal, warning that replacing Dominique so soon would erase everything Marvel had promised about diversity and progress. The debate wasn't just about one role anymore. It had become a battle over loyalty, representation, and the future of the MCU itself. And at the center of this storm was Dominique Thorne, silent at first, but soon ready to break that silence in ways that would shock everyone. Because what came next wasn't just a fan war, it was a direct clash between two actresses, two fan bases, and two very different visions of Marvel's future. For weeks, Dominique Thorne stayed silent as the rumors swirled around her. Fans wondered if she would address the speculation, if she would fight for her place in the MCU, or if she would quietly fade into the background. Then, without warning, Dominique finally broke her silence, and the internet exploded. It began with cryptic Instagram posts. One caption read, "People love to replace you before you're even gone." Fans instantly connected the dots, linking the message to Rachel Zegler and Marvel's rumored betrayal. Screenshots of the post spread across Twitter within minutes, sparking debates and fueling the storm. The messages didn't stop there. Another post appeared, "They'll smile in your face and plan your exit behind your back." Subtle, but unmistakable. For many fans, this wasn't just a vague statement. It was Dominique calling out Marvel itself. The implication was clear. Behind the scenes, something was happening, and Dominique wasn't afraid to hint at it. Then came the post that set everything on fire. A tweet that read, "Funny how people pretend to know the whole story, when all they've seen is a trailer. Good luck with your new Ironheart." Within an hour, it was deleted, but the damage was done. Screenshots spread like wildfire, and the fandom erupted into chaos. To her supporters, Dominique was simply being honest, venting frustration after being set up to fail. To her critics, she looked unprofessional, emotional, and unstable compared to Rachel's silence. And in that contrast, one actress raw and outspoken, the other calm and untouchable. The fan war only grew hotter. What started as speculation quickly grew into a cultural battle. Twitter feeds became war zones, TikTok edits turned into propaganda tools, and fan conventions turned hostile with debates about Rachel versus Dominique. For the first time in Marvel history, the fandom itself felt like it was tearing the MCU apart. Dominique's defenders launched hashtags like #JusticeForDominique and #SheIsIronheart, framing her as a victim of weak scripts, rushed writing, and impossible expectations. They argued she was unfairly blamed for Marvel's broader decline. Viral TikToks reminded fans that Robert Downey Jr. himself didn't perfect Tony Stark in his first movie. On the other side, Rachel's supporters were just as loud, if not louder. They created petitions demanding her casting, with one hitting over 200,000 signatures in days. Fan accounts flooded timelines with edits of Rachel in the Ironheart suit, claiming she was the star power Marvel desperately needed to save the franchise. Even panels at conventions turned into battlegrounds. Whenever Marvel's future projects were mentioned, fans booed or cheered, depending on whose name was brought up. What was once a discussion about storytelling had evolved into a full-blown war over loyalty, representation, and who truly deserved to carry Iron Man's legacy. Marvel couldn't ignore it anymore. The debate wasn't just online. It was public, loud, and threatening the brand itself. And behind closed doors, executives were already locked in their own war. Inside Marvel Studios, the divide was just as fierce as it was online. According to insiders, executives and creative teams split into two camps. On one side were those who believed Dominique Thorne deserved another chance. They argued that the problems weren't hers to own. The scripts were weak, the production rushed, and no one could have lived up to Tony Stark's legacy so soon. On the other side were the realists, executives staring at charts, petitions, and daily trending hashtags. To them, the numbers didn't lie. Fans weren't connecting with Dominique, and keeping her in the role risked sinking the MCU deeper into decline. For these executives, Rachel Zegler represented hope, a chance to inject fresh star power into a struggling franchise. The split was so deep that Marvel reportedly commissioned 2 versions of Ironheart Season 2. One version kept Dominique in the lead while Rachel appeared in a supporting role. The other slowly phased Dominique out while Rachel took over the mantle entirely. Both scripts existed, but only one could survive. The stakes went far beyond one character. Replacing Dominique would risk outrage over diversity and representation. Keeping her could lead to another season of weak numbers and negative headlines. Marvel was stuck in a lose-lose situation, with every choice carrying cultural, financial, and reputational risks. At the center of this storm was Kevin Feige himself, caught between loyalty and survival. And just when it seemed the decision couldn't get harder, the drama on set made everything even worse. The rumors weren't confined to social media or boardrooms. According to insiders, the tension spilled directly onto the set. Marvel reportedly tried to keep Dominique and Rachel apart, staggering schedules so the actresses wouldn't meet. But eventually, the inevitable happened. One afternoon, Dominique walked in unannounced and found Rachel filming in a prototype Ironheart suit. Crew members described the silence as heavier than any script. Dominique froze, stared, and walked out without a word. That night, fans noticed she unfollowed Marvel's official Instagram and wiped every Ironheart-related photo from her page. The set turned into a battlefield. Some crew members defended Dominique, claiming she'd been sabotaged with bad writing and impossible expectations. Others backed Rachel, praising her professionalism and composure. What was supposed to be Marvel's next big project felt more like a fractured production on the verge of collapse. Leaks spread across YouTube, TikTok, and fan blogs, painting the picture of a studio in chaos. Every rumor, every behind-the-scenes whisper became content, fueling the storm outside. Instead of excitement for Ironheart Season 2, the conversation was about betrayal, fan wars, and Marvel's identity crisis. At this point, Marvel had no choice. They couldn't juggle 2 versions of the show forever. They had to decide: protect Dominique and honor their original promise, or gamble on Rachel and risk cultural outrage. Either way, the decision would shake the MCU's future to its core. Dominique Thorne was supposed to be Marvel's future. The young prodigy, who would inherit Tony Stark's mantle and prove the MCU, still had life left after Endgame. But instead of a victory, her role became one of Marvel's ugliest controversies. What began as hope turned into backlash. Memes, petitions, deleted posts, and bitter fan wars dragged her name into the center of a storm she never asked for. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, Rachel Zegler's sudden involvement transformed that storm into a cultural war. Behind the scenes, executives are split. On set, the tension is unbearable. Online, the fandom fights daily over loyalty versus star power. The question isn't just who will wear the Ironheart suit, it's whether Marvel can survive the decision without tearing its own empire apart. So here's the question. Left hanging over Hollywood, is Rachel Zegler truly the savior Marvel needs, or is Disney about to make the biggest mistake in MCU history? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Team Dominique or Team Rachel? Because one thing's for sure, this battle is far from over.